All right, getting some of these channels live here. Just going to do a very brief little video. I'll tell you what's behind this. There's so much rhetoric online that is often not fun, not friendly. It's frustrating. We're in some very interesting times here in our country. And my wife actually made a comment the other day because we often talk policy together and with friends, and she said, I don't hear that in your social streams. You got to talk more about the stuff that you want to do. So I'm going to start doing a series of videos just talking about some of the stuff that I want to do so that people can kind of get to know me and what's important to me. I'm using a fairly new, well, not, it's not new, but it's new to me. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but it's a streaming software that allows me to stream across multiple platforms at the same time. So bear with me as I work through that, and hopefully I'll be able to see your chat and things. My hat looks kind of messed up here. Get it squared up. There we go. All right, so I'm going to talk about the climate change deception, and we're going to try to make these things really quick. As you guys know, if you've watched videos from me before, I can talk a long time. So I want to try to make these brief just to get the information across and hopefully give you a few things to dig a little deeper. So with this, if you're really interested in learning, so first of all, I'm an engineer. 55 years old, so I've been around a while. I've heard a lot of people complain about climate and cast warnings, and we've got 7 years until the end of the world and stuff like that. And once you go through, like, I don't know, 17 of those, you start questioning the validity of the people, and you realize most of them are from Hollywood, and you wonder who wrote their script for that complaint. I would recommend a couple books. One of them I read is called Unsettled by Stephen Noonan, which was really, or Coonan, Stephen Coonan, which was really good, very detailed. Even as an engineer, I'd say some of his stuff was over my head, but digestible and good, and it makes a lot of sense. Slightly easier to understand, I would say, is Apocalypse Now by Michael Schellenberger, which is also a really good book. Both those are really good. I listened to them on Audible and learned a lot from those, and I would strongly recommend that. I'm not going to use the data from those. I'm actually going to use a couple stories from my own life here to help draw this thing down for you. The bigger question about this is, though, why do they want to use climate change? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they really concerned about the world? Are they concerned about our future? Are they concerned about us? And the question is, yes, some of them are. I believe there are people who are legitimately concerned, people who maybe don't have the capacity. I don't want to say that they're mentally limited, but maybe they just don't have the capacity to understand the data or to see reality for what it really is in terms of the climate and how little of an effect. And I'm going to tell two quick stories, and then I'm going to give you one piece of information that will send you across the bridge if you're really struggling to decide whether or not you're for this or not. There's one other organization that I want to mention. It's called CFACT, and it's CFACT. And they're they have a location in Washington, D.C. They're supported, totally support. It's a donation only organization. Really, they're trying to teach the truth about climate through college campuses, and they're doing a good job with that. And I just wanted to give them a shout out because I know I've met with them and spent a little time, and they've even helped answer some questions for me. So CFACT, CFACT, I think. And they also have campus ambassadors for their college. So if you have students who are in college that want to be an ambassador, they can make some fairly easy money being an ambassador. So check with CFACT on that. So they want control. They can get that control through influence, but really they can also get it through money. Most of these people that are pushing the climate stuff, I think, already have plenty of money, but money is still a motivating factor. But ultimately, they just want control. And their chief factor for getting control is through fear. They want you to feel like, oh my goodness, there's a meteor headed for the Earth, and it's going to crash into the Earth, and it's going to send it off its axis, and we're all going to be cooked by tomorrow at lunch. They've always got some story like that maybe it's not quite that crazy, but that's what they want you to think and feel. They want to control you through fear. They want you to be fearful, because then you'll submit and you'll do what they tell them you'll do what they tell you to do. Now, let me just say on the outset, there are a lot of things that environmentalists and the whole sort of earth-loving group definitely do that I think we could learn from, that we could they bring value to things that we're doing. Like, one example I'll highlight is the ocean cleanup. Like, there is a lot of work going on to clean up debris in the ocean that I think is valuable, and I think that we ought to invest in that. And I think we ought to be more careful about stuff we're dumping out there that doesn't degrade or doesn't sink, or or that is harmful to the sea life and that sort of thing. There's lots of other things I think you can do that are helpful, but some of it is just, again, it's just a business. It's just they're trying to make more money. One example is like recycling. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with recycling. I very much approve of recycling, but and I think it can save us a lot in terms of extracting new products and things like that. But what I mean is like, you have recycling bins at your house. It's like most of those get collected and they get dumped in the same spot anyways. And then they get, they either get dumped or they get sorted out. And if they go through a sorter, then why not just put it all together and just let the sorter do its job? But if they have a separate bin, then they can charge you more for that. So I live in the country and farmland. We don't have that. We just have a dumpster, and we put our stuff in there and they take it away and they sort it, or they do whatever they do with it. So anyway, let me just run through these two quick stories, and then I'm going to give you one fact that I think will just send you over the edge. The first one will take you back to the 1980s, when I was fairly young, and there was this big crisis around the refrigerant that you were using in your vehicles, in our vehicles back then. So I know some of the people watching or listening probably weren't even alive back then. That's okay. Let me tell you. Let me just take you back to when I was a kid. There was a big dispute about R12, it was called refrigerant 12. There's even a company called Freon, and they sort of took over the industry, and people started calling refrigerant Freon because that was the name of the company that made most of the refrigerant. And it was called R12, refrigerant 12 by Freon. And everybody just said, hey, I need to go get some Freon. Everybody knew you were talking about R12 back then, because that was pretty much what everybody used in the automotive industry, or the automotive world. In refrigeration for commercial or refrigerators or rooftop units or different things, they had different types of refrigerant they used for those. Anyway, they were they had these evident claims that the ozone layer was being cooked by Freon, by R12, that was being released from when cars got in accidents, or when you were working on an air conditioning unit in a vehicle and you vacuumed out. That's the process. You actually vacuum out the refrigerant. And back then we would just blow it out into the air and put new stuff in when we were done putting new seals in, or making repairs, or changing out a condenser or evaporator or whatever. So then basically they decided through some studies that the ozone layer was being baked and fried and cooked, and it was going to, be this environmental catastrophe. So I just laugh at some of this stuff, because it really was so serious back then. People spent billions of dollars. I mean, this was unbelievable, the amount of research. There was a big controversy of whether it was going to be R134A or some other, refrigerant options. R134A ended up winning. That became the standard. There was lots of changes. Guess what? Everybody needed to retrofit their cars. There was lots of expense. You couldn't mix the Freons because they operated differently. So you had to vacuum out the systems. You had to clean them. You had to get the oils out of it, because there's a certain amount of oil in those systems as well. And you had to put different oil in, and then you had to put different seals in, because the R12 seals didn't work with the R134A. And there's like 20 seals in the whole system. And so, it's very expensive to do the changeover. And then lo and behold, they came out in some new cars with 134A. And I think it was a Toyota that got in an accident first. And the whole front of the car burned up, because they didn't realize that 134A was wildly flammable. Something, I don't know whether it was the refrigerant or whether it was the oil that they used. Anyway, it's just one of those things. It was sort of like another little side story here. I live in farmland. Again, this environmental stuff is a total pain in the Yeah, you got me there. Okay, so I'm talking about the tractors and the issues with those. And what happens is, they have all these sensors and all these different things. And one of the ideas was to come out with this new wiring that was coated with some sort of a bamboo recycled material instead of a rubber petroleum-based coating. Uh, and the tractor was like 3 days old, $1 million tractor out in the field, and it stopped overnight, for so people could sleep or whatever, and they went back the next morning, and the field mice had gone in and eaten all the shielding off of the wires because they liked the smell of the bamboo or taste of it or whatever, and so the tractor was ruined. So it's just stuff like that happens, and some of it you have to laugh at. Some of it wouldn't be so frustrating if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of the stuff that we're doing is sort of like, 2 steps forward and 1 7/8 step back, and sometimes 2 1/4 steps back, because something costs more than what we were building before. I'm going to do a separate video on petroleum products, because that's a whole nother. This video does leak into that a little bit. I'll tell you in the next story, but I want to do a separate video on that because it's so astounding. So anyway, back to the 134A R12 debate. So they made the switch. They didn't ban R12, but they basically taxed it and made it so the volume of it was available, made it so expensive. I mean, it went from being, 50 cents a pound or something to, $8 or $10, $12 a pound. It was crazy. And one system could take several pounds of material. So, and it turns out R134A has never been as inexpensive as R12 was back in the day, because we always have opportunists. So anyway, here's the moral of the story. As the years click by and technology improves, specifically to reading the ozone layer, what they found out in the end was that the ozone layer is sort of a living organism that moves and it shifts, and the ozone layer is very high in the atmosphere. And what it is supposed to do is it's supposed to sort of seal the air that's around the Earth. So it acts as a block to sort of shield just the oxygen, or not the oxygen up there, just the air content between space and the atmosphere. And what they found was that the ozone actually sort of naturally comes open and creates a hole and allows gases to escape out of Earth's atmosphere, and then it recloses. So it's kind of like a breathing mechanism for our atmosphere. So there really never was any big threat or fear over the use of R12. It all ended up being a lie, and people spent billions of dollars and lots and lots of money to try to adjust for that. So that's one story. Next story is much more current. And this one is interesting because I'm going to ask you about something that I can almost guarantee you I would bet you one of my new hats. You like these hats? Look at that. Pray and Act USA since 1969. That was when I was born. It even has raised letters on there. Isn't that cool? Anyway, you got to get yourself one of these hats. Tell me if you've heard of this. If you have heard of this, I will give you one of these hats. We usually ask people to donate to the campaign, which that'd be really nice to get one of these. But if you have heard of this and you know the story, then I'll give you a free hat next time I see you. The experiment or the example is, or the event was the largest geological event in the history of our lives to happen on Earth. And it happened, let's see, it was 2 years and 3-4 months. What are we at? No, it was 2.5 years ago, just like say 2 years and 5 months ago. It was in January of 2022. And it was called the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption. How many people have heard of that? Raise your hand. I've heard of it. Let me tell you why you never heard about it. It was the largest geological event of our life. It was a massive volcanic eruption under the sea, and it transferred, get this, 250,000 Olympic swimming pool size, giant Olympic swimming pool, like huge. It transferred that much water into the atmosphere. 250,000 Olympic swimming pools. I mean, it's hard to even conceive how much that is. You have to ask Riley Gaines. Like that is a ton of water, right? 250,000 Olympic swimming pools. It just basically the volcanic eruption came up under the ocean, and it was so hot that it blew it basically evaporated the water in the ocean and blew it straight up to 60,000-70,000 feet in the air. And then that water is now a vapor that is above the weather, and it's floating around. So the weather only goes up to basically like the clouds. Like if you look at the cloud level, like above that, like when you get in an airplane and you go flying, there's no weather up there. You never have rain at 40,000 feet flying around in a, Alaska Airlines 737. There's no weather above the clouds. And so all this moisture goes up into the atmosphere, and they say that it'll take 7 or 8 years, who knows if they're right, for that water to come back to Earth. Now, why is it that you've never heard of that? Well, the reason you've never heard of it is because it flies in the face of the entire climate change hoax. And the reason is because that event will increase the temperature of the Earth probably 2 degrees. They estimate 2 or 3 degrees over the next few years, because it sort of turns Earth into a bit of a sauna. 250,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water, turned into a vapor that's floating around. It kind of turns the Earth into this big sauna. So, you get to go from your, the cold dip, your cold dip little thing on your back porch to the sauna that we now live in for the next few years until that water comes back down to Earth. Well, wait a second. You say, Jerrod, that is increasing the temperature of the Earth. That's what they're saying it happens. Yeah, but what's causing it? What's causing it? Is it the plastic bags that you used to get at the grocery store? Is it the cows that are out in my fields here? No, it was a natural event. It was totally the Earth. And there is nothing that any of us are ever going to do in our entire lives that is going to have even a measurable impact as compared to the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption, which the news did not cover. And they didn't cover it because they didn't want you to know it, because they might think you think about it and they're like, wait a second, that's a natural occurring event that just had a massive impact on the climate, and you guys aren't talking about it. Why? Because they can't control it, but they can control you, and that's exactly what they want. So those are my 2 stories. Now, let me give you one fact before I wrap up, because oh my goodness, 18 minutes. I always do this. I shoot for 5 minutes, and it ends up being 20. Okay, do you know how big in diameter the Earth is? Again, I'll give you a hat if you can tell me. 3, 2, 1. The Earth is approximately 8,000 miles in diameter. 8,000 miles. I need something round. Do I have anything round? I don't see anything round here. Okay, I have a rock. Somebody gave me a rock. Okay, this rock. Pretend this rock is the Earth. That means from finger to thumb, from here to here, is 8,000 miles. That's a lot. I mean, it's 8,000 miles. That's a long ways, right? So the interesting thing about it is they're talking about all the effects of humanity on climate, right? So we all know the Earth is 8,000 miles in diameter. How much space does it take to put all of the humans in Earth? All the people that are on the Earth right now, how big of a space do you have to pack those people into? The amount will surprise you, because the property I have here on my place is way bigger than what we need. It's shocking, okay? You need a quarter cubed mile. So you need a quarter mile this way, a quarter mile this way, and a quarter mile up and down, okay? So a quarter mile this way, quarter mile this way, quarter mile this way. Can you see that? Can you see my hands? A quarter mile cube, like a Rubik's Cube. Each side is a quarter mile. 1/4 mile. That's how much you need to pack everyone who's on the planet. And we have 8,000 miles on this planet. And you want to tell me that the people of the Earth are having a measurable impact on climate? Don't believe the lies, my friends. Until next time, God bless you. Thank you. We can take America back, but we've got to work together to do it.